The Halal Chapter Podcast.
Hello and Assalamualaikum. Welcome to another episode of the Halal Travel Podcast. You're listening to me, Hazra, Rauda and Nurul. Welcome to our new episode. Today is a very exciting day because we're going to be talking to someone really special every week. But today is extra special because we have a penguin keeper from Jurong Bird Park. Hello, Yanti.
Hi.
Hi.
So Yanti is currently at Jurong Bird Park, right? You're in the office.
Yes, I'm currently in the office.
So, if you don't already know, Jurong Bird Park is basically a bird park in Singapore.
Wow, what an explanation, Azira.
It's like, we have the Singapore Zoo and then we have the Jurong Bird Park. This kind of animal encounters.
Which we have all gone to before.
Yes, since kids.
Especially as kids.
No, but you know what? I've never been to Jurong Bird Park.
No.
Serious, I swear.
Maybe you forgot.
Oh. No, I swear I've never been to
Really?
Jurong Bird Park. I don't know. Maybe
I remember the flamingos the most.
Really? I mean, you can see that in Singapore Zoo, so.
Okay.
Oh, no. But then, I've only been to Singapore Zoo. I should definitely check out Jurong Bird Park. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, without further ado, I'm just gonna ask Yanti to introduce herself first.
Alright, so hi. Hi everyone. My name is Yanti. I am, as you guys know, a penguin keeper at Jurong Bird Park. I have been here for the past 4 years. I actually first joined here back in September 2017. I'm 25 years old. I have always been, I'm pretty sure it's pretty obvious, I'm an animal lover. So I have always been an animal lover ever since I was young. More specifically, I do love cats. So I love cats ever since I was a baby. I had cats ever since, as far as I can remember, ever since I was a baby as well. But even though, I'm working in this profession, I actually studied in Nanyang Polytechnic, had a diploma in business management, and specialized in events management and supply chain management, as surprisingly as that sounds.
Wow. That's a very fun.
Very different from what you're doing now.
Right? Totally unexpected twist.
Yeah. So how did your journey with Jurong Bird Park started?
Okay, so as you can tell, it's very unexpected. So originally, I finished poly. I graduated from poly, and then I immediately got a job in an office job, which is your basic 9 to 5 typical job. So that didn't last that long. So it lasted for probably half a year, and then I decided that office jobs aren't really for me. I didn't really enjoy my time, because it's the second you clock in, in the morning, I was already counting down the hours.
Oh no!
So yeah, so. Even though it was a stable job, of course, it's your typical job, especially here in Singapore. But I really, at that point of time, I didn't feel like it was what I wanted to do. Yeah. At least for my young years.
Yeah. And
young adult, yes.
At that point, you were 21.
So at that point of time, I was around 21 years old. 21 years old. So 6 months in, I decided to just take a leap of faith, and I realized that what I really want to do is ultimately is to work with animals. Since I am still an animal lover, so I love cats. I've had multiple pets at home, so I just decided to one day up and go. I resigned, and then I started applying for jobs, because initially my plan was actually to work with domestic animals, your cats and dogs. So naturally I would apply for job roles at SPCA or even a vet nurse. Unfortunately though, because these positions, they would require an animal experience or background, especially for a vet nurse, and I didn't have that at the time. So I didn't get the positions. And then it was actually my mom, surprisingly, who suggested I applied as a keeper in Singapore Zoo, because she used to, way back, she used to work in night safari retail. So she was pretty, familiar with the atmosphere there in the parks there. So she suggested that to me, and then I applied. So I know how, you probably think that, how it's not like a typical job here in Singapore. It's not a stable job, like your office jobs and stuff. So one would think that, your parents probably wouldn't be as supportive. My family were pretty hesitant about it at first, but then eventually, after realizing that I wasn't happy in an office job, and either way, I resigned. I already resigned, so I was gonna, go for a job. Yeah, that's too bad. So initially, eventually, they actually warmed up to the idea, and then my mom was the one who stepped in and suggested, working at a zoo, and then that was when I applied for a keeper. So actually. Funny story, I applied for a role in Singapore Zoo at first. I went for the interview, and it was actually a position for an elephant keeper. So however, I think because at that point of time, because how elephant keepers, obviously, you would expect, heavy lifting and more, I would say, more manual work as compared to a penguin keeper. So at that point of time, I feel they probably weren't sure that I was able to handle it, because as compared to now, like back then I was really skinny and I would, I was actually frail looking back then. Like in hindsight, when I look back, I was pretty weak looking. So that's probably the reason why I didn't get the job. And then they actually directed me to Jurong Bird Park, because there's actually a vacancy here. And then that's where I got the role of a penguin keeper. So also, like looking back, I realized that, it's not because, because when you think about being a keeper, you would naturally think that, oh, isn't there like a more traditionally masculine job, like usually men would go for it and stuff like that. And especially like the fact that my family were okay with me, a girl, applying for a keeper. But, growing up, as for my household, like personally, we don't really see that as an issue, because you know how you guys watch the Crocodile Hunters when you were young?
Yes.
The one with Steve Irwin. The late Steve Irwin. So he was like a reptile specialist, right? So as for the crocodile hunter, it's both him and his wife. So growing up, you watch that as kids, you realize that, it's not like keepers aren't necessarily for men. Like women can do it as well. So in our household, it was totally fine. So that's why I applied for a role. And then as for the elephant keeper role, that's how I think they do. It's not that I was a female that I didn't get the job, because even right now they currently do have a female elephant keeper back in zoo. Yeah, so it's pretty much more so because I was skinny and stuff. So anyway, so that was how I landed a job as a penguin keeper here in Singapore Zoo.
Ooh, very cool. Out of curiosity though, do you need experience having worked with animals to work in Singapore Zoo or Jurong Bird Park, or what sort of background do they normally look at? Okay,
so you know how I had zero background other than the cats that I have at home. That's the only experience I have with animals. Or I do volunteer in SPCA here and there. But other than that, I had zero background, especially for wild exotic animals. But getting the job, they do, because when you get the job, it's more so an on-the-job training.
Right.
So when I got the job, my colleagues actually were the one that really helped me a lot, especially my supervisors as well, with the daily on-the-job training. And also the company sends us out to courses, so animal-related courses. So those definitely helped me a lot. I would do also my own personal research. At home, I took the time to learn about, especially the animals that are under my care, which are penguins. So just all this on-the-job training and personal research, and just practice.
So really just passion for animals and love for working with animals is what you need.
Yeah. So I think as long as you're genuine about, working and, play a part to provide the best care for the animals, because ultimately the role of a keeper it's not just, cleaning and feeding and heavy lifting around the exhibit. It's more than that, I feel like. It's because as keepers, other roles that we do is, for example, enrichment. So what enrichment is basically it's like a activity or something we create or provide for the animals in order to mentally and physically stimulate them.
Right.
So things like this kind of promote or encourage them to, show their natural behaviors. Like, for example, even for cats, how cats, they like to hunt and chase after things. So naturally you play with like lasers or feathers. So that is a part of enrichment as well, also playing with toys. So we do the same thing with our penguins. Such example is like we would have like this rubber ball with holes in it. We'll stuff fishes inside and then we'll throw it into the pool. And then the penguins will start chasing after it because they're very food motivated. So they'll start chasing after it. They'll swim into the pool. They start like picking on the fishes. So it's basically like a hunting for them, Yeah, so those kind of things as well, coming up with enrichments. Other things like Keeper's Role do include also like study research project. You wouldn't think, that keepers do research as well, but we do, because from the daily observation of the birds, you can collect data, so much data for it. And as for now, currently, I am also doing a study research where it's about the activity levels of the penguins under my care. And it's just the data that I collect, in the future, it could provide me with insights that would probably help me find better ways in order to, better their care or improve their environment in order to provide the best care for them and stuff like that.
Wow.
So yeah. Other than that, sorry, there's also guest interaction, So because initially coming to Jurong Bird Park, I thought that I wouldn't have to deal with humans anymore. Just have to work, take care of the animals, and then go back home. But then little did I know that I still have to talk to the guests, and even we do have a penguin chit chat session. This is way before COVID, of course, where it's basically just a short commentary session, 10 to 15 minutes about facts about the animals, about the penguins. And then afterwards, it's your guest feeding session. But of course, ever since COVID, it's been suspended for the safe distancing and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know, did I answer all your questions?
No, it was just a remark. It sounds like you're not just a penguin keeper, you're a guardians of the penguins, something like that. So you're a teacher, you're a mother, you're a teacher not to just the penguins themselves, but also to humans. So I think your role really encompasses every single thing regarding penguins there. I think you should change your role and designation to guardians of the penguins. It sounds cooler,
That's true.
Right?
I would love that. It sounds cool as well.
I thought before this recording, I thought Yanti was just gonna talk about how she plays with penguins. So I didn't think she was gonna talk about research and everything.
Yeah.
It just took me back to my school excursion days where I have to record down what I see, which is not very entertaining.
The activity book, right? While you are there.
With the clipboard and everything. Oh god, I cannot. The zoologist kind of thing. But I think it's so cool how it's so much more than
what meets the eye, I think, for us. Just looking at it, we just think you feed and you just play and you just clean, but it's not.
It takes a lot of brain work also.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, proud. So, what are...
there's a lot of misconception.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, what are some of the, according to your research, right? So, what are some of the characteristics that we may not know about penguins, and what makes them unique?
Okay, so actually there's a lot. You know how even you mentioned before, even for cats, they have different cats have different personalities and stuff, right? That makes them them. It's the same thing as penguins. It doesn't matter if it's a different species or individuals in the same species, which are of the same species. Sorry. They all have different personalities in a sense where one can be clumsier than the other. For instance, the penguins, so penguins in general, in nature, they're very curious creatures. And obviously they're clumsy looking as well, from the way they waddle about and stuff. So as for our African penguins, the one that is in the outdoor exhibit, so you know how they're outdoors, so they're exposed to nature. So basically even if a butterfly will fly past, you can see 4 to 5 of them just start running and chasing after the butterflies. Because they're that curious, they're that curious. They would just want to figure out what is this creature, what is this flying object. So that you would just see them toppling over one another. and it's very funny. So they're curious, they're clumsy. They can also be very aggressive and territorial. So this is when, like, especially during your, like, for example, their nesting or breeding season, where they, days before they start breeding and stuff, pairs would get very territorial. Like, they would have their own specific spaces in as an African den as well, which is an indoor den, air conditioned. So in that den, they have their own specific spaces. And during this, breeding, nesting season, they can get very aggressive. So even we as keepers, to this day, I still get very, like, scared. Not very scared. Like, I still get, like, wary whenever, or cautious, like, whenever I go near, because once they're, in their defensive mode, you don't know when they would attack, especially when you're standing near to their den.
Oh no!
So this would naturally cause, like, even, like, aggression towards each other, because each pair wants to defend their own nest and stuff. So this is when, like, keepers we step in, and then we make sure that in order to prevent this aggression from taking place, we provide, like, enough space for them. We space out their nest, and also provide, like, enough nesting material, so they don't start stealing one another's nesting materials and stuff. So yeah, other than that, so all these, like, unique personalities between them actually really do they just make them unique. Like, each one of them have their own personalities. And, like, for example, how we have one penguin called Gucci, right? So we have an African penguin called Gucci. So he is hand raised. So Gucci, he is I would say he's the manja one. So he's the clingy one, because he was hand raised and stuff. So yeah, that, as for Gucci, like, we call him the manja guy. So that is his personality, and that's what, like, makes him unique, Yeah. So stuff like this.
It's so cute, because, like, my cat is currently in the phase where she would scratch herself so hard that her fur would fall off.
Oh no!
So I said, these cats, they are, like, so curious in just like penguins. So she would scratch it, and then the fur would fly off, and then she would look, fur, my fur. Then she would run for the fur.
Kiss the fur.
Honestly, the penguins are the same. Like, the penguins, if you notice, if you come to, like, Jurong Bird Park one day and you just observe them, they will start. You would feel like itchiness around their neck area or something. They would use their claws to scratch. And then when, like, feathers would fly off, they also, like, start staring at the feathers and start chasing after them as well. So it's pretty much the same thing.
It's so cool. So since you have already mentioned about Maru, or, like, Gucci and Maru the king, so tell us more about them and how I heard that you brought them up since birth.
So I'll start off with Maru. So Maru, he was our first ever king penguin that was successfully hatched in Jurong Bird Park for, like, ever since, like, a decade ago. So when you think about it, it's a really huge thing, like, for the park, because, like, a decade is a long time, and not so, like, we had Maru, actually. As for me, it's like the first month. No, sorry, not the first month. Like, after a month that I just joined Jurong Bird Park, so he was hatched on October of 2017. So that was a month in, right? So as for me, it was, like, a really big thing, like, I just came in, I just joined, and then I have the privilege of seeing a king penguin chick, and even getting involved in, like, the hen raising of it. So as for me personally, it was, like, a huge thing for me. It was huge. I feel like I came just in time, like, I wasn't meant to be here to be a part of it, to raise him up. So yeah, it was a huge thing. Like, I was able to hand raise Maru, and since, like, none of us had the experience before of hand raising chicks, it was a new learning skill for all three of us. So we have 3 penguin keepers here. So it was something that we learned together, and yeah, it was something that we were able to take part in together. And that was for Maru, and Maru is 4 years old now, since he was, it was back in 2017. So he's a big boy now. As for Gucci, Gucci is our African penguin that we also were able to hand raise. So as for Gucci, the reason we hand raised them is because, hand raised him was because he actually got abandoned by his parents. So that actually happens. So it happens whenever, like, a pair they probably, like, hatch two chicks, and they would it's possible that they could neglect one chick.
Oh.
You know, like if they had, they'll probably pay more attention to the first and neglect the second chick. So that is where, keepers step in, because whenever they're chicks, and whenever we let the parents raise them, we still do weigh the chicks every few days just to make sure, the parents feed them and not getting neglected and stuff. As for Gucci, we realized that at the early stages, the parents are already starting to neglect him and not feeding him. So that's where we stepped in, we took him out, and we decided to hand raise him ourselves. So which is why he's pretty manja to the keepers.
So cute.
And then I was the one who had the privilege to name him Gucci. So you would think that I named him after like a luxury brand, right? But actually, like back then, it was because like that baby talk, baby saying Gucci Gucci go.
Okay. Okay.
So to a baby, that I had that in mind. So when naming him, I decided, why not name him Gucci? But then I realized that instead of spelling it maybe like Goochi, I will name it just after the luxury brand. So that seems cooler and that sounds cooler, right?
So diva.
I thought it was a high maintenance penguin.
Well, right now he's pretty high maintenance. So I guess the name is fitting as well. So that's a story for Gucci.
Do you think, I just wondering, like, because like cats sometimes, or like dogs, they would greet you at the door, right? So do the penguins greet you when you first come in for your daily
they
things?
do. Yeah, because the penguins, especially the hen-raised one, they do know when it's you. They can recognize how you look like, basically. So even like for Gucci, let's say, while they're out in the exhibit swimming, and we start walking past the exhibit, just when checking on them and stuff, they would immediately realize that it's us, and they will start calling out to us.
How do they call you?
For African penguins, sorry.
How do they call you?
So
I've never heard that before.
They basically sound like donkeys, which is very funny. Yeah. So if you know how donkeys sound like, that's exactly how they sound like. So that's what they are also called.
Grunting.
Correct. Yeah. So they do sound like that. So when like from afar, I start hearing like donkey sounds, like I already know like the penguins are calling us. Yeah.
And for the African
and
penguins,
also they also know like the colors.
Ooh.
Because how like we're green in color.
Yeah.
I feel like personally, I feel like they recognize the colors as well. Yeah, sorry, you were saying.
Sorry. And for the African penguins?
Yeah, so those were the African penguins.
Sorry.
Gucci were the African penguins. Like if you meant like the king penguins, so the king penguins, they're at the indoor exhibit, right? So they don't really have like a like a wider area to spot us and stuff. It's usually just a back area where we walk into the exhibit. But as for them, like whenever, it's the same thing, like whenever they realize that we're walking past, they immediately know, it's a keeper. And probably like in their mind, it's feeding time. Because usually when we walk past, it's like with bowls of fishes and stuff. So that's when they recognize us. Yeah.
So cute. Yeah. So I just cannot get over the donkey song. I'm like rethinking everything. But one of the questions that I have is that how many penguins are there right now in Jurong Bird Park?
Okay, so there are about like 65 penguins total here in Jurong Bird Park. We have 5 species of penguins in total. We have the king penguins, which are the largest ones we have here, which is what Maori is. And then we have the Humboldt penguins. We have Gentoo penguins, we have Northern Rockhopper penguins, and lastly, our African penguins, which is, they're the only ones in our outdoor exhibit because they're the only ones who can actually adapt in Singapore weather.
Okay. And so with these 65 penguins, do you, as a keeper, need to know every single one of them by name? And how do you actually distinguish them besides from, their species?
All right. So as for me, when I first came in, it was quite a struggle, like obviously like 65 penguins, and like for me personally as well, I am really bad at remembering names and faces among humans. So like the struggle with the pressure I had to like remember 65 penguins and like distinguish each and every one of them.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So it started off with, because all of them do have like a ID tag, like an identification tag around their flipper. So they're basically like, think of it as bracelets around their flipper. It doesn't hurt or anything. It's just color-coded bracelets with number as well, in order for us to identify them. So initially I had my colleagues, they were a lot of help. They like gave me like the identification chart. So every day I just, in order to, try to start memorizing them, I would put like an ID to a face, sort of. That was how I started, but I realized that it was really hard, to do it that way. And it was really a struggle for me. But eventually, I took the time, like even like during my break and stuff, I would just sit and observe the birds and try to memorize them. So I did eventually by heart, because all of them, like I mentioned, they have different personalities, right? So you can kind of, tell them off by their personality as well. Other than that, also their physical appearance. So I know like for majority of people, they'll see like they all look the same. They do have like small differences, like their plumage, which are their feather pattern. It could be different as well. Like for instance, like older penguins might have like a duller color, and then younger ones would naturally have like more vibrant colors as well. And then also like the size of their beak or the shape of their beak. Like for instance, we have an African penguin called Captain. So the reason we named him Captain was because like the tip of his beak was like hooked. So it looked like, a pirate's hook. So that was how we named him Captain. And as for Gucci, again, for example, Gucci has this pink gland. So all the penguins do have pink glands, like at the tip of their eye. So this is to help them with like the heat and stuff. Yeah. You reduce the heat and all. So he has like really thick pink glands around his eye. So yeah, that's how we tell Gucci, from the rest of them.
Cool.
So yeah, eventually I started like, working with them every day. It was like 8.5 hours a day. You just get a hang of it. You just start, recognizing them.
It's like it's like telling twins apart.
Yeah.
Every 24/7.
65 twins. The 30 plus twins that you have to memorize.
Yeah.
Cool.
And also, like it's really important for us as keepers to, memorize, recognize our birds, because we do perform daily head counts for our birds. So we have to account for our birds, observe whether, they're well and like health issues or anything. So yeah, like it was a crucial part for me to, start memorizing them like at early stages.
Do they turn around when you call the name?
Sorry?
Do they turn around when you call the name?
Turn around? Yeah, they do.
They respond.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
They raise
they would like start. Yeah, correct. So they'll, like I mentioned, like the second they realize like a keeper is near them or like calling for them, they'll immediately look away and start calling after us, or they'll start running after us. Because most of the times we do, like I mentioned, like carry pails of fishes, so they would think, oh, it's feeding time, Yeah.
Wow. I am just so amazed because like before like animal came into my life, like I've only seen them in the zoo. I've never actually put personality into animals. Like I've always seen them as like passing creatures, but only when you work with them 24/7, or like only when you are with them like for 8 hours a day, then you realize their personality. And like sometimes it's also amazing because like I have a friend who has a community cat. So she can really talk everything and anything about that cat and how she's very diva and how she likes this, she likes that, she likes this, she likes that. So it's, you really need to observe her.
Yeah, correct.
So heartwarming.
Animals also have personalities.
Before that I was just so ignorant.
Now we know.
Yeah. So
because in a way also, as for me, they're like pretty much like children. I feel like I'm in a daycare here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially when you say like when you walk past and then you will hear donkey sounds. It really is like you're in the primary school. Like, you know how when teacher. Exactly. When the teacher walk past and like, call
Teacher, what are you doing? Teacher, what are you carrying?
Oh my god, so cute. So I just want to know like something. I was just curious about something like how do you? I'm not sure if you know about this, but how do you transport animals from outside of the country?
Outside of the country?
Yeah.
So basically, as for those, there's you do have to, it depends on what country you're exporting to, whether it's a colder and warmer climate, and from there as for us, it's also depends on the size of the penguin. Say if it's a smaller species of penguin like African or the humboldt or even the gentle penguins, we like a crate, which is basically like a pet box that would like suffice, as long as, like I mentioned, the temperature of the country, if it's colder or it's warmer, they would then need to provide do necessary changes or customizations to the crate lah. So basically like provide maybe like blocks of ice or ice tags and stuff like that. So it's basically like customization of the crate. And if it's a king penguin, we usually, from what I knew, the last export that we had, they actually customized the entire crate in order to, to fit a king penguin inside. And a lot of times we actually choose to transport birds in like pairs. We don't usually leave them alone. If you have to transport just a singular penguin, there are cases where people actually provide like a reflective surface, just so the penguins don't feel alone. Because you know how like they're in a colony, so they feel much safer. When they see a kind of their own, rather than being in a dark box.
That is so thoughtful.
But you have
so
to
basically customized crates.
Also recreate the environment, right? Like if they need to be in a cold environment, so that has to be. And do they normally get transported by air or by sea or?
So it's usually by air. From what I know, it's usually by air because it's faster as well.
Faster, yeah.
Yeah, because like it's basically to have the shortest travel time for the animals, so as to reduce stress, not stress them out too much. Yeah, so the fastest way possible, which is usually by air. Yeah.
And have you had any experience with like exporting or like importing these animals? And
as for me personally, ever since I went here, no experience of exporting. However, we do have like recently an import of one of our northern rockhopper penguin, which is Pierre. I don't know if you heard of him. So he was actually imported from Perth Zoo. So the reason they import him was because he was a rescue penguin. They actually rescued him from the wild because they realized that he was being abandoned, by his parents. So the Perth Zoo actually stepped in, rescued him, and then since we had other rockhoppers here in Jurong Bird Park, they don't. So they made an agreement, to let us adopt him. So as for like import, that he was the only experience I had so far.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so earlier on, just now you mentioned about the penguin chit chat session at the Jurong Bird Park. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more and how how we can as guests go and
experience.
Yeah, is it like a sign up thing or is it like during the show times or something like that?
Okay, so as for the penguin chit chats, you don't have to sign up or pay for it. It's basically, it happens right before the guest feeding session. So as for the guest feeding, of course, you have to, pay for it and all. But for the chit chat, usually, it's just, you can just come by to the exhibit and just listen to the commentary session because we'll be there waiting anyway on the platform. But like I mentioned earlier, this is like way before COVID because as of now, there's no chit chat session whatsoever. It's basically just guest token feeding. And because of the safe distancing measures as well, we do, in order to, not encourage gathering, like large group of gathering, we do cut down, having a limit as to a number of guests being able to feed our penguins. And so if you're planning actually to come by Jurong Bird Park sometime in the near future, I would suggest you to book the tickets for the feeding in advance because they do get sold out pretty quickly. There's a lot of there's a lot of guests who are members of the parks, and we do have like weekly members where I see the familiar faces, familiar families at each week, and they come by for the penguin feeding. Wow. Yeah, so I would suggest like in the future just advance booking for the any token feeding around the entire park.
Good tip.
Yeah.
Yes. This weekend.
Looking forward to see you.
Oh no.
Just find me, Yanti.
Do you remember like your first ever panic attack with the penguins?
So panic attack like regarding the penguins?
Yes.
Okay, so I would say like the first one when I first joined was you know how like I mentioned like it was pretty hard to identify each bird when I first joined. So we do have like these supplements that we provide for the birds. So they're basically tablets that we put into the fish, and we make sure that each penguin receives one fish, so one supplemented fish. So at the initial stages, of course, like my colleagues can't always be there for me, right? Like, during feedings, like, I have to be on my own as well. So one of the first few feeding sessions where I had no one to, guide me through. I had to, that was when I started to panic, because like, I don't know, it was hard for me to keep track. I didn't know if I already fed like this individual, whether or not I skipped this individual. I would say, that was my first panic. I wouldn't say a panic attack, but like my first panic moment, not being able to memorize all of them and recognize, and having to feed the supplemented fish.
Yeah.
But eventually, of course, having memorized them by heart and stuff, I did get the hang of it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Wow. But is it harmful if you like give them like more supplements?
No. So basically, take it as like vitamin C, like even if you get like a double dose of vitamin C, it's not harmful per se. Yeah. So as for supplement, it's fine, unless like, you're talking about medication. Then if as for medication, if I am not like comfortable with feeding medication, since I have not recognized them, I would obviously not do it and like let someone else do it instead. But as for supplements, it's not not harmful.
And when they are sick, do they get isolated just so that they do not spread?
Just like it's COVID.
We accidentally give the medication to someone else, another animal, right? So like,
okay, so as for the penguins, if they are sick or they happen to be sick and they need to be isolated for, let's say, to be closely monitored, we would actually barricade them in the exhibit itself, if possible. So that, because if the second you bring them out of the exhibit, if it's not, necessary for that, it would cause just further stress for them, which we do not want to do to them. Yeah, because like, as long as, they're in the exhibit, they still see the colony, they still see like their partner, for instance. It's like I would say the best course of action to take for a sick bird. So when I say like isolate them in the exhibit, we actually put up these barricades, which are transparent barricades. So all these barricades that we have are actually customized barricades. So we customize according to our exhibit, according to our bird. So they're pretty low barricades which are transparent, and we are just, it's very easy to like put them out according to what size we need in the exhibit itself. Yeah, so that's for like the isolation of sick birds.
I just get this vision of like a low barricade penguin in a low barricade area, and then just talking to their friends outside. Do they do that?
Yeah, they actually do that. Yeah, because like as for the king penguins, like their head is able to stick out of the barricade. It depends. We have like a low barricade and like a high barricade and stuff. So in cases where we don't need that high of a barricade, we'll just provide with a low one, and they are still able to communicate with their partners by like
you just hear a bunch of
Hey, how are you doing over there?
Wow. Cute.
Yeah.
So cute. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Since we were like on the topic of barricades, is actually I wanted to add like it's the same thing for like chicks, like other than like sick birds. As for like chicks, like when we do have chicks, and how like, of course, like when we hen raise them, it has to be away from the colony, right?
Yeah.
So at stages where you want to introduce them back into the colony, into the exhibit, so what we do is we put them into the barricades, the transparent barricades. So since they are pretty small back then, you can't really have contact with the rest. We use like a higher barricade. And But then, like, so the early stages of introducing is like to see them visually and hear them. So yeah, as for chicks as well, we do use these barricades. So whenever, like, even sometimes like visitors come by, we do have chicks in the barricades. They would assume that it's a sick bird when it's really just a chick. Yeah, it's just the introduction stages of the chick.
I'm just curious, like, how small or how big is a chick compared to a normal penguin?
It depends what species you're talking about. Because as for chicks, right? As for king penguins, they grow pretty fast. Like when they hatch, they could be like a size of my palm, and then like for a few weeks after, they are like already like double or triple the size.
Wow.
Yeah. So at like probably like 3-4 months in, they are already a size of a king penguin.
Wow.
Adult.
That's really fast.
Yeah. So they grow very fast. Yeah.
From a premature to a teenage.
They were like a baby.
Yeah. And the only way you can actually tell them apart from the adults is because the chicks at 3-4 months in, they still do have like these down feathers. So we call them down feathers. So they're basically really fluffy looking. Instead of your typical black and white and yellow plumage, it's just this fluff ball. So that's when you can tell that it's a chick.
It's a happy feet guy. You can watch it.
It's a grey colour fur, right?
Yeah. The extra fat that I would.
Yeah. And also the reason why we need to isolate the chick while we introduce into the exhibit, other than the fact that, it's just your initial stages of introduction, is also because when they do have these down feathers, since these feathers are not actually waterproof like your normal adult feathers. So the second, if they were to jump into the pool, it will weigh pretty heavy for them. So also for the safety of the chick, we still, keep them in an isolated area. So after a couple months in, they start molting, and that's when they have the normal, waterproof feather. And then we start letting it out.
Oh, so they don't swim, They don't swim when they are chicks?
No. So because of that reason, where for the safety of them, so we do have like a holding room at the back of house. So this is where we have like a small pool there. So occasionally we would bring the chick out and start, helping it to learn how to swim and practice swimming. So we do that before we let it out into the exhibit.
Cool.
Okay.
I'm just imagining the chick penguin with the boy trying to learn how to swim, but it's going to be like, it's just a cartoon thing.
So okay, like in the event of like someone for example, like any keeper, so like elephant keeper or like a penguin keeper like yourself, in the event that we have to leave the penguins for other commitments, are there like any form of weaning off process for these animals?
So basically, you know how, like, of course, naturally you would, I would say it's kind of inevitable to like have a bond with the animals, especially if you hand raise them. But of course, since they are wild animals at the end of the day, we still do keep a distance. So they're not like entirely, attached to us and stuff. Like, they don't see us as a parent or a partner. So we still do keep that distance. So in any case where we do have to move to places like transfer out of the section, it's not quite a big problem because they're not as attached to us. So ever since like the start, even for chicks, like for example, even for Maru, we do keep a distance with him.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be that much of a problem.
Oh, so basically they wouldn't like attach themselves to you, or do you constantly keep a distance?
Yeah. So they would probably see us as a caretaker. I feel like that's what I would think. They see us as a caretaker, someone who feeds them and takes care of them. But as for partners and stuff, they don't necessarily, like, even for Maru, he's pairing up with others in the exhibit. And Gucci has actually recently paired up with someone. It wouldn't be a problem. So as for us, we encourage that behavior. And whenever like we see them, like for instance for Gucci, whenever we see him with this partner that he chose, we would like encourage them to, breed and stuff as well.
Serious? Do you guys go like,
Yeah.
go lah, go. Like, to the
But
moment.
they do have like their nesting season and stuff.
Yeah.
So if we do observe that they're trying to nest, we would of course like provide nesting materials to encourage it.
Ooh, matchmakers.
Nesting
Pretty much,
material
yeah.
sounds
I don't know what materials. What materials were you talking about?
So as for penguins, like okay, okay. So basically, as for like, I'll take it. I'll say like I'll use African penguins for instance.
Yeah.
So they in their den they do have these pebbles that we use as So they will use these pebbles to build a nesting site for them, and since they also have like, access to the outdoor, which is the islands. We do have plantations there, so trees and bushes. So they would actually pick from that and then bring them over to the den and start, building a nest there.
Wow.
So if we realize that they are in their nesting season, we would actually start picking this like plants or leaves and start, scattering around and letting them choose what they need.
How many newborns do you get in a year, typically?
Sorry?
How many new chicks do you get in a year?
Okay, so that depends on whether or not it's fertile. But as for breeding season, they do have 2 clutches in a year. So each pair, on average, lah. So in a clutch, they can have up to 2 eggs. So it's whether or not it's successful, it's fertile or not. But I would say within like there's 2 clutches, maybe like 1 per pair and stuff.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you incubate? Do you incubate the eggs? Too much.
Okay.
Because I've seen this video of like a shark egg, I think. So they would take away the egg with an intention to make sure that the breeding process goes. Not
I
breeding.
saw this TikTok, right?
Yeah, TikTok. They will take away the egg so that they can incubate it or like really, really focus on making sure that the egg grows well and then just help to hatch it successfully, so that because it's an endangered species, so that's why there needs to be like special care and concern so that they can let the egg hatch successfully. Is it the same for penguins?
Okay, so as for the penguins here in Jurong Bird Park, for African penguins, we don't artificially incubate it, so we don't take the egg out because the parents they're pretty experienced. All the pairs that we do have, they have experience with raising chicks on their own, and it's been successful ever since. Like half, or I probably say half of the population we have is all raised here in Bird Park by the pairs themselves. So as for African penguins, we have no, I would say, worry about it because we know they'll be able to raise the chick properly. So we just let the parents to parent rear themselves and incubate the eggs themselves. Unless, like, for example, the exception is cases like Gucci where we have to step in. But that's for African penguins. As for like the king penguins, you know how I mentioned, even for Maru, it's been a decade since they successfully raised, hatch a chick. So as for king penguins, it's like the eggs are very precious to us. So we, in order to maximize, the population, we would rather, and plus like the pairs are pretty inexperienced considering how after 10 years they still haven't, hatched, lay eggs and stuff. So that is when, as for king penguins, that is when the keepers would actually step in and take the egg out. So when we take the egg out, we actually do swap it with a dummy egg. So it's a dummy egg, so it's basically like a 3D egg, like 3D printing. So we made it. We arranged with the vets actually to make a perfect dummy egg, and that's whenever we swap an egg out, we would replace it with a dummy egg. So it's not a shock for the parents. Like they would still, in their mind, they would still think, the egg is still safe with them. So that's when we take it out and we do, like you mentioned, artificially incubate the egg.
That's interesting. I think, do they really believe it's a real egg?
I mean, they're animals.
With personalities and emotions.
I don't know.
Interesting.
It must be a mission to swap out the egg successfully. Is it a mission?
Hear the Mission Impossible sound in the background.
A mission to
swap out the eggs.
To quietly swap out the eggs.
Distract the parents away from the nest and then swap the eggs.
So as for king, like the second you get near its you can't really avoid getting pecked at lah, because obviously, they would want to protect their egg. So we would just, because we at the indoor exhibit, considering it's a cold temperature, we do have like a thick jacket on. So using these thick jackets, we use it as a guard to quickly swap out the dummy egg with swap out the real egg with the dummy egg. And in order not to like stress the parents out too much, since we're already swapping the egg, so we try to do it as quickly as we can and just, get out of the exhibit.
Yeah. I think it's cool how like they can be soft in one part and then like they can be protective also. Yeah. I think this is the nature of animals in general also. Okay, before we end this episode, I just want to know like what are some of the things that we can do to raise awareness or like to show more compassion to the animal kingdom as a human.
Okay, so I think that taking the time maybe to even like as simple as coming by to the park and taking the time to learn, like listen to what the keepers, I would say keepers have a lot to share here. So you can learn a lot from keepers, and just probably like learn about the animals, and then this would naturally, I feel like, have make you have this form of appreciation for them at least. And I feel like from this you would naturally choose to like do things like take action in conserving them, like, because conservation, you could really help out and participate in it. Like such things you could do is like conserve energy and like reduce carbon footprint, and even as simple as opting for like a more sustainable seafood source. Like even the penguins here that we have, the I would say the fishes come from a sustainable seafood. So you can do like simple things like this, and it would actually, you would think that it doesn't make a difference, but it actually does make a difference. So I think like with having that in mind, you would really help a lot for the animals, like wild animals and stuff. So also like as for like sustainable seafood, like how you can you probably like won't have any idea, how do I find out whether the seafood that I have is sustainable or not. So basically usually in their packaging they would have like these MSC or ASC labeling. So they're basically labels which shows whether or not it's sustainable or not. And also if you're still unsure, you can actually even look up at the WWF website, which is the World Wildlife Fund website. And over there you can actually find like guidebooks which shows all this sustainable food and stuff. So I think things like conserving, you can really contribute to the animals.
It's something that we should.
And even the earth right now, considering it's climate change and all.
For sure.
I think we really need to make a change.
Yeah, man.
Make a conscious effort.
Yeah.
Also support your parks. Visit your local parks.
Jurong Bird Park.
Because we do do conservation and stuff. So honestly, like what support that we get from like visitors and stuff, like we use to for conservation as well. So definitely support your park.
I think there's a lot more to learn about,
For sure,
which I don't think we know enough of.
Or make the effort enough to find out.
So if you happen to be in Singapore, please go ahead to Jurong Bird Park and learn more about these animals. I think honestly, not because Singapore is my favorite country or like where I live, but I think our zoos and our bird parks are amazing.
It's super clean, please.
Super clean and so entertaining, I think, at the same time.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Yanti, for spending some time with us to share about your penguin stories. Okay, I think that is all for this episode. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye to the camera.
Bye.
If you're in Singapore, you'll know that food is our number one priority. Food in Singaporeans are practically inseparable. It's literally the best ingredient for any occasion, any stress you got going on. Food solves everything. Because, for example, if it's your birthday, let's go eat. You got a promotion, you deserve a treat, sayang. You feel like pulling your hair out, come on, I'll bring you for supper. Yeah, you get what I mean? It's literally perfect for everything. And of course, we want to tell you everything about it. Like places you didn't know were halal, or 12 new halal places you need to try this week, for example. We are determined to make your tummy bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger than last year or any time. So follow us on the blog to get all the insights at www.halaltrip.com, and of course we are also on every social media platform at Halal Trip.
Alright guys, thanks for listening. So we'll see you on the next episode. Don't forget to give us a shout out on anchor.fm/the Halal Travel Podcast. Your voice message could be featured in our next episode.
Yup, and if you have any advertising and collaboration opportunities, contact us at info@halaltrip.com. That's info@halaltrip.com.
Also, don't forget to follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Halal Trip. We're also now on Telegram and TikTok. Until next time, get inspired, go and inspire others.